In this video, we're going to give the user a way to sort their data. So currently the data is sorted by the default sort by value, which is by date. We also want to give them a way to sort by amount. And we're going to be setting up a select dropdown so they can pick the way they want to sort and view their expenses. Now to kick this off, I am going to close all of the files except for app and expense list filters.js. We don't need the other ones and they're taking up a little bit of space. Now the goal inside of here is to allow us to obviously change those filters, but currently we have some pretty poor test data. So let's go ahead and fix this first. I'm going to shift the developer tools off to the right-hand side, and the test data we have is poor because the one with a greater amount already comes first, so there's no way to really test that it's working, and they both have the exact same value for created at. So once again, not particularly useful. To actually come up with some more interesting data, we're just going to add one more call to add expense in app.js. I'm going to take the water bill, copy that, and paste it below the gas bill. And I'm going to go ahead and change this over to rent. And I'll set the amount equal to $1,095. And now we're also going to tweak created at for this middle one. I'll set created at equal to a value in the future. Let's go ahead and just use the number 1000. So now when we're sorting by date, the order should change. We should see gas, then water and rent. When we're sorting by amount, we would expect rent first, water second, gas last. I'm also going to remove these set text filter calls. Those were useful before when we didn't have a way to set the text filter, but now they're really just holding us back. So I'm going to remove all of those, and what we get in the end is our test data. And by default, it is indeed sorting by date. Everything looks great. Even though gas bill wasn't the first one to be added, it is indeed the first one showing up. Now we need a way to actually change it, and we're going to be doing that by setting up select right here, right after our text search. I'm going to open close the select tag. And inside of there, we have to put the individual options. We just have two, the first one being date and the second one being amount. Selects in JSX work exactly the same way they do in HTML. So I'll just set up the option tag inside of here, opening and closing it. Now I put the visible value inside of the tag. So right here for the first one, we will have date. And for the second one, the second option, we will have the string amount. This value doesn't get used anywhere other than the fact that it gets shown to the screen. When someone picks one and we actually figure out what value they picked, we want to use the lowercase date or amount, and we can provide that by setting value. So we can set value equal to date for date, and down below value equal to lowercase amount for amount. So this is the value the user sees. This is the value that we'll be using behind the scenes when we actually track the select for changes. Now, if we do save things over in the browser, we can see we get date because that happens to be the first one in the list, but it's not actually sorting by what we pick. So if I switch over to amount, the data does not change. What we need to do is add the exact same props to select that we added to input up above. So we have to set the value and we have to handle changes. Now the API for getting this done is exactly the same as it is above for text. So up above, we set the value, and this is what goes in the input. For select, we still set the value using the exact same prop, and then it just picks which one matches. So if I set the value to date, it'll show date. If I set the value to amount, it'll show the amount option over here. We also need to set up on change, and the API for that is identical as well. We access the e-event argument, and then we access e.target.value to get the value. So if I were to switch to this one, I would get the string value amount. If I were to switch to this one, I would get the string value for date. Now they're identical. What we're going to be doing for select is exactly the same as what we did for input. And since we've already done it, I'm going to make you do it on your own. So what you need to do is set up value and on change for select. Now with select, we need to get that value back in on change, and we have to figure out whether it's date or amount, because remember, we have two different action generators. We have sort by date and sort by amount. So you're going to want to add a little bit of conditional logic in on change to determine which thing you should be dispatching. Now, I know this one is a little bit of a stretch, but I do want you to give it an honest try as a challenge. And if you can't get it done, that's okay. We're going to go through the process together. So pause the video, take as much time as you need to knock this one out, and make sure to test your work too. So switch between the two and make sure the data does indeed sort correctly. Pause the video, and when you're done, click play. All right, how'd that go? I'm going to kick things off by setting up select. Now for all of these, we can break everything out into their own line. So I can take the input and I can move all of these props onto their own line. Perfect. And this is a pretty nice format, and we'll do the exact same thing for select. So right here, what do we need to provide? We have to provide value and onChange. So I'm going to start that process by setting up value. Where is the value going to come from? Well, it comes from props.filters, which contains all of our filters. And we know the one for the sorting is on SortBy. So we're going to make sure to get the value for that. Now we also need to handle the change. So on change, what do we want to do on change? Right here, we're going to go ahead and set up our event handler. We access that event argument. We then set up the rest of the arrow function. And in here, we're going to be adding a little bit of conditional logic. So if e.target.value is, in this case, date, we want to do one thing. We'll add an else if e.target.value is equal to amount. If it's equal to amount, we're going to go ahead and do something else. Now inside of here, we can just dispatch those actions. Over in filters, we have sort by date and sort by amount. Before we can use them, we got to import them. So I'll add the import up above. Sort by date and sort by amount. Perfect. Now we can actually use those right here. For the value of date, we will use props.dispatch. We will dispatch sort by date. Excellent. Then we can go ahead and actually call it. And for amount, we'll do the exact same thing with the other action generator. Props.dispatch. We are going to call sort by amount. Doing this is going to make sure that as we change the select, it actually changes the store. And as the store changes, we're going to make sure to set the value. So it actually changes what the user sees. Now, when we set up our form inputs, things like our text inputs and our select dropdowns, and we use value and onChange, we're creating what's commonly known as a controlled input. So when you see the term controlled input in the documentation or in an article on React, don't freak out. It just means an input where the value is controlled by JavaScript. So right here, we are controlling it by JavaScript. Right here, we are controlling it by JavaScript. The alternative would be something like the form field we used in the indecision app in the last video. So we're going to be sticking with the controlled inputs when we can. It gives us a lot more control. Currently, we're not necessarily taking advantage of all of that control, but we will be a little bit later. So we'll be able to see how that plays out. For now, though, we are just going to go ahead and make sure everything is working as expected. I am going to save the expense list filters file. Over here, are things sorted by date? Yes. We have gas bill coming first, then water and rent. I'm going to switch it over to amount. And there we go. Rent comes first because that is the most expensive. Water comes next at $45. And for some reason, my gas is free, so that comes last. And there we have it. We now have a select input worked into the filters component. That's where we're going to stop for this one. In this video, we used a select inside of JSX, and we saw that it was very similar to how we use selects inside of regular HTML. We also saw that the props we use are similar to the props we use for our inputs in JSX. So we can set the value and we can do something when the value changes. The same is true for text inputs and for selects. Now that we have this in place, we're going to continue on. I'm very excited to get to that. So I am going to remove the comment down below, save the file, and I will see you in the next video.